Friends, I'm so excited about this text. Do you know why? Oh, you've already guessed. I know that not everyone is a longtime churchgoer, but I'm curious for you, how often has your pastor been pregnant, and obviously pregnant, during Advent and gets to read the pregnant ladies text? I am excited. We talk about the Bible as the living Word of God, which is our way of saying that there are times that it means different things to us at different points in our lives, depending on what we've experienced. And I am reading this text in a whole new way today, you might imagine. Some things that I'm noticing, but you might need some context for this. If you have been pregnant before, you will have to tell me if my descriptions are accurate. And if you have not, I hope I don't freak you out too much. Baby's movement. There are a whole bunch of words that we use for this. The three kind of main ones are a roll, a kick, or a flutter. If you've ever wondered what that feels like, here's my best description: a roll. If you were to kind of press your fist against your arm, feel free to do this if you wanted, and kind of press gently and upwards until it releases, that's kind of like a roll. There's just a little bit of pressure until it suddenly releases as it kind of moves across your belly. It's very weird. A kick, sometimes it's kind of a poke or a jab, depending on the strength of your kid. I've been thinking of it as kind of a light flick on the arm. Not enough to hurt you, but definitely something that you notice. A flutter might be more like drumming your fingers across your arm. It's just this kind of weird, fluttery sensation. Okay, so we have these movements. I had never really paid attention to the baby's movement in this passage. In reading it, I guess I always thought it was a bit of a stretch. What Elizabeth's baby hears the greeting of Mary, mother of Jesus, and then has this spectacular leap of joy. But then the mother, Elizabeth, happens to know exactly why the child moved. I guess I never doubted the story, but it never really seemed to make sense to me. It seemed to stretch. But here are some things that I have learned. I've learned that my own child's movements are not always random. For example, this child always moves when worship begins. I don't know if that fills me with joy or if that shouldn't, because my child will always move when worship begins. But it doesn't matter if it's a contemporary service or a traditional one. When the organ starts or when the band begins, Wednesday, Sunday, doesn't matter, this child starts moving. My child starts moving also whenever we are at home and start watching one of our favorite TV shows. A personal favorite of mine, I can be at home sitting, relaxing, reading a book. My husband will walk in the room and he will start speaking, and this child will start moving. I used to think that baby movements were totally random before they're born, but it is simply not true. Kids can hear, and they're already beginning to react to the world even before they are born. Now, because I am a little bit of a book nerd, I was wondering about this word leaped. Having just described for you what these different movements feel like, what is leaped for joy? Now, it turns out that the Greek word for this, skirtao, is a Greek expression that translates exactly what we've translated as, leaped for joy. But it is a common practice for them that when something great happened, some kind of celebration, a victory, a powerful prayer was answered, people responded with a very physical gesture, like a leap for joy. The most contemporary equivalent, if you've ever been at a sporting game and the score is really close at the end, but at the last few seconds, your favorite player finally makes a goal and everyone leaps to their feet in celebration, that's skirtao, leaped for joy. Now, I have no idea what that felt like for Elizabeth, but this story does not feel quite so far-fetched to me. Mom-to-be Elizabeth, who would be familiar with her own child's movements by this point, would have recognized that her child was reacting in a bigger than usual way to something big that was going on. So what exactly is this child reacting to? Here's where I would actually love to get to more of the real meat of my sermon. I think what I'm trying to say is I resonate with this text in a new way that I never have before. But I'm also very aware that this topic in general, about pregnancy, about having kids, is not an easy conversation for everybody. People tend to bring to this conversation whatever their experience has been. And so if you are on good terms with your children and you had no problems getting pregnant and having the childbirth you wanted, this is a relatively easy topic. But if you are someone who had trouble getting pregnant or has wanted or still wants children and has had no luck, if you have children but your family doesn't look normal and you feel like you face judgment for it, or you did not want children and you felt judged for it, this can be a really touchy subject. Now, I do want to say, if that is you who wanted kids or still wants them, or have wanted them for years or felt judged for the manner in which your kids came into the world, I want you to feel seen in the best way possible today, because you are actually better represented in this text than I am. These women, Elizabeth, she's the one who's 6 months pregnant with this leaping child. And when we first meet her, if you were to back up several verses from this text, we're told that she and her husband are getting on in years, and they have had no children because she is unable to have them. So she's been deemed too old, and like many other women who can't have children in the Bible, she has knelt countless hours before God, sobbing because she cannot have the children she has always wanted. In fact, it is so surprising when God finally sends an angel to them to say they will have a son. Her husband doesn't believe it, and God strikes him mute for the next 9 months. So the 6-month pregnant woman in this story has battled infertility her entire life and only just had that prayer answered. I wonder if there's a part of her that can't even believe it. And then Mary. This is, of course, Mary, the mother of Jesus. And literally the verses before, she has just met with the angel who's told her she will carry God's son. So at this point, she is technically unmarried, engaged, but single, unwed, very young. Typical married age for a first century woman is right after puberty, so age 13 to 15. So she is effectively a teenager expecting a child out of wedlock. And this was a very big deal in those days. For her to have conceived a child from who knows where while betrothed to another man, honestly, this is possible grounds for death for her. And so we aren't entirely sure, but when we read that first verse, that she immediately goes to her cousin, and our last verse today, where she stays there for 3 months, it's entirely possible that she is running because she's afraid. This is a story about two women who do not fit the mold of what having a child is supposed to be. Elizabeth is an outcast because of her inability to have children. Mary may be killed for having a child before she is married. This is a messy story. And yet, despite the mess, this is where God chooses to be born. Not to stability, not to riches, not to a heterosexual couple who have been married for years and are ready for a kid. God does not choose to be born where everyone might expect. God is born in the middle of the mess of people's lives. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. Because the promise of the gospel isn't that everything will turn out perfectly for us on earth. As much as I wish it were the case, God isn't some kind of shield against every disease or hurt or pain or hardship. The promise of the gospel isn't that bad things won't ever touch your life again. The promise of the gospel is that these things will never hold you again. And so there's this beautiful message of this passage that God is not afraid of the mess of your life. God is willing to walk right into it, be born even into the middle of unpleasant circumstances. That's the promise of Christmas. I think another way that this story feels new to me, I'd often heard the narrative part where Mary comes and the child leaps, but I'd never really read Mary's response until I started seminary. And so here's book nerd, Pastor Meggie again. As you're reading Luke chapter 1, the author is setting the stage for what is to come. And this song that Mary sings is a foreshadowing of just what kind of leader Jesus will be. And so I want you to hear again the kinds of things that Jesus will do. Verse 50 says that he will have mercy on his people. Verse 52 says he will bring down the powerful oppressors. He will uplift those who are hurting. 53 says that he will feed the hungry, that the rich don't get more than they need. Jesus' ministry is this kind of great reversal where those who are hurting or outcast, betrayed, sick, or in need, those are the ones who get the help that they need. And those bad guys who are taking stuff from or hurting the poor, they don't get the attention. Jesus is always looking for the least, the lost, the last, and the lonely, and promising them that life is more than their pain. And I hope that you know at this point, I'm not just talking about pregnancy or about having children. This is a message of hope for everyone. There is no circumstance you can find yourself in where God won't find you. So thinking about this Christmas season that's just a few days away, if you are expecting a marvelous, warm, fuzzy Christmas, know that Jesus is there. And if you're expecting a Christmas that might be lonely or sad or distraught, know that Jesus is there. And if life feels really great, Jesus is there. And if life doesn't, Jesus is there. If you are hurting or sick or grieving, lonely, financially strapped, battling your health, tense or estranged from your family, depressed, anxious, sad, or angry, Jesus is there. Jesus chose to be born into the mess of the world, but God promises to fix it. And that's a huge promise. A promise so big that an unborn baby got the sense of it and leaps for joy. Friends, it's a promise I believe to be true. God chooses to be born into the mess of the world, and God promises to fix it. So whatever kind of thing you are experiencing this Christmas season, if it's mess or merriment or some mixture of both, please know that Jesus loves you, and Jesus always promises to be there, no matter what your life may look like.